Now, Twelfth Night is gone, and with it the season of goodwill. It's a melancholy fact that Christmas and New Year is also the high point for domestic disharmony and, in an alarming number of cases, domestic violence. The full extent of this horror isn't known, although a figure of over 1 million women a year is often given as an indication of the scale. Many women have difficulty persuading the police to take them seriously, but sometimes the abusers do opt for treatment.
I'm quite a bit bigger than my wife, so it was very, very easy to intimidate her with my size. So I'd start using that as a controlling measure. It turned physical one afternoon. My wife wasn't listening to what I was saying, or I didn't believe she was understanding what I was saying, and in my mind she was not being very, very clever or very alert to what I wanted to do. So I lashed out and punched her in the stomach. This was about 8 weeks after my son was born, so obviously it was very painful.
He was lovely, and we went to the beach, did normal couple things, like hung out, just had tea together, watched TV, had a laugh, and sort of, well, just a normal relationship to begin with, really.
Things went from an argumentative situation to a physically abusive situation within the space of weeks. Can't think of a form of violence that I didn't display.
Nearly every part of my body he'd hit, and after a while it started getting to the point where he'd do it where people couldn't see it.
Got to the point where I put my hands around my partner's throat, trying to get answers out of her.
That she was cheating on you?
Yes. And I squeezed and squeezed, and I just couldn't let go. My partner lost all consciousness and fell out of my hands onto the floor.
Were you worried that he was going to kill you?
Yes. I was very scared that one day I wouldn't wake up from being strangled. I wouldn't not be there no more. It was very sorry.
My wife made it clear that if I didn't go on the course, it would be all over. That's where I learned that some of my passive-aggressive behaviours were abuse. In my mind at the time, before I started the course, it was just physical violence was abuse, not the control that I'd been carrying out for the past number of years. My wife recently left the phone on the side and it got damaged, whereas a number of years ago that would have been an exact opportunity for me to be passive-aggressive and bully her and belittle her. It was just, I could basically just shrug my shoulders and go, oh well, we'll get a new one.
I quite enjoyed watching Hollyoaks. When the children had gone to bed, I'd sit down and watch Hollyoaks. They were actually doing a storyline on domestic abuse, and I was watching it and I was like, that's me. I need to sort of get out of this, because it was showing that it was getting worse and worse to the point that she was going to get seriously hurt. And I thought, no, I've had enough. I'm not doing it no more. I need to get out. And I went upstairs and called the police.
Admitted to arguing with my partner, but any physical damages to herself, to the property, I flipped. I made it her fault. I accused her of hitting herself.
They phoned up and said, no, we've dropped the case again. So I was like, right, okay.
Did you want that case to be dropped?
No. No, I didn't want it to be dropped. I wanted him to be punished for what he'd done to me.
I'd given up on everything. I very rapidly went downhill. I got suicidal. I took an overdose. I didn't know where to go. I engaged myself on the course. I asked for a self-referral.
He's a completely changed person to what he was. He can actually hold his temper for an awful lot longer, and he's able to recognise when he's getting to the point where he's going to explode, and he will leave and take a time out.
Do you think that you're cured?
No. My belief is I'm still exactly the same person. I still have the ability to get that angry, be that aggressive, but I have the tools and I have the management techniques to control my anger and do something more positive with it.
I wouldn't say he will never do it again, but as long as we keep recognising it and keep working at it and keep putting the things in place and recognising the signs, we can get through it without it getting to that point.
Why should we believe you now?
It's a question of trust. I don't expect people to believe me now. I don't expect anyone to believe me. Ever. Because I have diminished the trust to that level. It's people's own decisions whether to trust me again or not.
Well, now the names were changed in that report to keep the contributors anonymous. The question was raised, are these programmes that perpetrators go on the way forward? We're joined now by Colin Fitzgerald of Respect, the organisation that regulates these courses, and by Polly Neate, the Chief Executive of Women's Aid. What happens on these courses?
Well, it depends from course to course, but broadly what happens is that men are asked to come on the programme. As a condition of their attendance on the programme, they have to provide their partner support details, so their partners get support at the same time, and then they're basically asked to look at their behaviour, and they're held accountable for their behaviour and asked to take responsibility for it.
Can you, as it were, cure anyone who comes onto a course?
I think cure is too strong a word. I think what programmes are good at is we're good at increasing safety. We're good as part of a community response to domestic violence, increasing the safety of victims and children, and that's our primary aim.
You presumably are pleased that these courses exist then, are you?
Definitely. I think what's really important is what Colin just said, that they're part of a response to domestic violence. And we do need to remember that at this time in the UK, we have a lot of inadequacies in the police and criminal justice response to domestic violence, and we have a situation where services across the country for victims and affected children are being decimated. It's really important to point out that these programmes rely on the rest of that response from society in order to be effective, and it's really important these programmes on their own don't keep victims safe. There's a whole infrastructure and a response to domestic violence that needs to do that.
Who regulates you?
Who regulates
these
programmes?
Courses, yes.
Well, we, with our member programmes, we regulate them, so we provide accreditation
You're
standards
self-regulating?
No, we regulate those programmes. So us as an organisation, Respect as an organisation, is endorsed by a number of organisations. So, for example, the Home Office, the Ministry of Justice.
But you're a charity, are you?
Yeah, we're an NGO.
Right. So how do you ensure consistency?
Well, we can only ensure consistency across the board for our member programmes, so obviously anything outside of that we can't. But what we provide is accreditation standards, and then what we would do is we would go and assess programmes on the basis of their work. We would look at their work and decide whether or not they fulfilled those standards.
I suppose it's possible that in some cases, perhaps many cases, it's better that the man and the woman are not together at all.
That could be the case, and I think that goes back to what I was saying, really, that we need a much earlier intervention. We need victims to feel confident at coming forward to the police and being supported to make those choices. And I think the other really important thing to remember is that we are seeing a trend for commissioning very short-term perpetrator programmes, not necessarily effective, and we're in an environment where everyone is trying to save money, and there are some real risks created by that. Where these programmes are of good quality, that's one thing, but we need to remember that couples counselling, mediation, short-term behavioural programmes for perpetrators are not valid perpetrator treatment programmes.
Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Is there a danger that if you teach a man somehow to manage his behaviour so that he's not overtly violent, that there's a danger he may start to find more subtle ways of being abusive? Is there a worry about that?
Yeah, there's absolutely a concern, and that's why the primary aim of the programmes that we endorse and that we regulate, as it were, we ask that the primary aim is to increase safety, first and foremost. That can only happen if there are linked partner support services. In other words, the guy comes on the programme and he signs up to limited confidentiality, because we know that one of the reasons that women, for example, will stay in relationships with men that are abusive, over and above children, is if their partner is getting some support. So the type of support he gets is absolutely vital.
Yeah, I really agree with that, and I think it's you can't emphasise enough the importance for services that actually protect victims and give them choices in the situation. I think the other thing to say is this is not just about anger management. It's not just about a guy learning to control his temper, because domestic violence is about coercion and control, and it's quite calculated. It isn't just somebody who can't keep their temper. It's a much more complicated set of behaviours than that, and it's really important that those are addressed. It's not just about a 6-week anger management course and calling that a perpetrator programme.
Thank you very much, both of you.